Hello everyone, my name is John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to Baker Street Reviews, the series where I watch and review all kinds of different Sherlock Holmes adaptations, and it is finally time. It is finally time for the one and only Jeremy Brett. I dressed up for the occasion, as you can tell, and surprisingly enough, and to my shame, I'm not really that familiar with the 1984 TV series. Like I said, yeah, shame on me. But I'm here to change it. I'm here to change that, and I left it up to you, the viewers, to decide which episode we are going to watch for this Baker Street review. I'm pretty sure we're probably going to come back to this series at some point and maybe watch some of the later episodes. But for this first review on the 1984 series, you have decided that we are going to watch A Scandal in Bohemia, which is not only one of the most popular and well-known Sherlock Holmes stories, but it is also, I think, the very first episode of this particular TV series. So, I have not seen this episode before. I have seen like 2 or 3 episodes of this series, but not this one. So I'm, like I said, not all too familiar with the show. I have seen Jeremy Brett before in the role, but I really need to familiarize myself more with this particular adaptation. I don't really even have an excuse for why I have not watched this show yet. Maybe time, maybe, I don't know, I'd never got around to watching it, but we're going to change that by watching one of the episodes today. And as always, a bit of background story, which I'm, of course, not taking from Wikipedia. So this is the 1984 Granada television series, which stars, as we all know, the one and only Jeremy Brett, who is, I think we can say, considered to be the definitive Sherlock Holmes actor. He played this part for like 10 years, and it basically like consumed his life. Like when he took on the role, he was dedicated to it. He was really passionate about it, as in he like wrote down all the stuff, all the details, all the characterizations from all the 60 Sherlock Holmes stories as written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and like masterfully crafted his character and wanted this Sherlock Holmes and the stories around him to be as accurate and close to the canon as possible. Like he would like pay close attention to the script, how details were written around the character, how the stories and the cases were adapted, and he was, like, you could really say like consumed by the role. Like you could probably even make an argument for method acting. Like he was obsessed with this character, and he was really fascinated by the different like sort of characteristics the Sherlock Holmes character had, and he was really like sort of falling into this characterization to a point where, you know, he only like referred to Sherlock Holmes as it's him, like he basically like you know who kind of thing. And like it really took him over, like during like the later years, like the 80s, also when his health started to decline. He was at a point even having dreams and nightmares about Sherlock Holmes. It was really like the role had consumed him, which, you know, on the one hand is like probably really bad, you know, considering his health and everything. And I think he also struggled with like mental illness, and he had like heart problems and everything. Well, on the other hand, it's probably also the reason why Jeremy Brett is considered to be the definitive Sherlock Holmes actor, because he was so dedicated to the role. And in this first episode, which is part of like naturally the first series, we do get a different Watson actor, as far as I understood. Let me check, because they do change Watson actors at some point. So like in the first series is David Berg as Watson, and later it's Edward Hardwick as Watson. So we're going to see like the first version of Watson in this one with a different actor, and probably at some point when we're going to come back to this show, maybe like a couple of times, we're going to watch one of the later episodes with the other Watson actor. So the premise for this series is, I mean, pretty basic. The show basically documents all the major cases of the Sherlock Holmes canon. They adapted, I think, like almost all of the major cases, like I think like 45 out of the 60 stories, maybe even more. So like most of the major cases are there. And today we are going to take a look at A Scandal in Bohemia, which is the story famous for featuring Irene Adler. So we have several things here that are interesting. Naturally, the characterization of Sherlock Holmes as played by Jerry Brett. We also have Watson, of course. But naturally, in this case, we also have Irene Adler, who I'm always very interested in as a character, because Irene Adler is considered to be like the most interesting like female character in the Sherlock Holmes canon. And I mean, you know my whole spiel that I've gone on about, that Irene Adler doesn't always get like the recognition she deserves, or that she isn't really adapted properly in many adaptations. She's often, you know, reduced to be Sherlock Holmes' love interest, or that she's, you know, that she's just completely different and misunderstood in many adaptations. So I'm hoping you see that, since the Granada series is considered to be like very faithful to the original stories, I'm hoping that we'll see a very accurate portrayal of the Irene Adler character that will show, you know, the true core of the Scandal in Bohemia, as that Sherlock Holmes isn't actually really the good guy in that story, and that Irene is a very strong, independent woman who knows what she's doing. She's smarter than Holmes in that instance. She outsmarts him. She knows what she's doing. She gets married to another man and basically screws over everyone else and does her own thing. Does not fall in love with Holmes, but definitely leaves like an impact on Holmes, who goes on to like remember her as the woman. So I'm hoping that we do get to see this like strong portrayal of Irene Adler in this episode. So that's pretty much it for all the preamble rambling. I'm very excited to get into this. I'm kind of glad that you viewers chose this episode. I mean, I gave you a choice of like 5 of some of my favorite episodes I knew that the show had covered, and yeah, most of you basically said, yeah, it's got to be a Scandal in Bohemia. So I'm not disappointed, and I mean, it's a good entry since it is the very first episode of the series. So that's it for all the prologue talk. Let's get into it. Here we go. I'm already digging the set design. There he is. The one and only. Oh, are they... Oh, they're probably looking for the pictures. This is Irene's place. Oh, is that Irene? Strong entrance.
The woman, the beautiful Irene Adler.
It's directly taken from the original story.
Filled with apprehension as to his mood.
Yeah, what's his mood going to be? Is he depressed again, sitting in the chair for like 2 weeks? Told you he's gonna sit in this chair, legs up and everything. Good. Good. I'm liking the drug reference here.
Strongly recommend a 7% solution of cocaine.
That first line, this just immediately gives you
Would you care to try
good.
it?
Look at him.
And stimulates the mind.
Yes, and destroys it in time.
I like Watson here. How stern he is in warning him about this. Oh God.
You can close that drawer.
Why are you worried that Holmes is ever so slightly mad? I'm liking how homely this feels, just like, you know, seeing Sherlock like light all the candles and he's getting ready in the background while Watson reads.
Excellent, Watson.
I love it. I mean, I'm already loving Watson in this. Like, he gets to do a bit of like deducing on his own. He's not an idiot.
I am lost without my boss.
There's the line.
But he sounded so
Very
secretive.
good. It's one of my favorites.
I may need your help.
There's even a bit of comedy. I like it. The disguise is impeccable. You couldn't possibly tell who this is.
How do you do, sir?
I just love the way he reads some of these lines, like Holmes ever so slightly sassy and judgy, but without it like shining completely through what he thinks. Well, someone is having an idea.
Out of position, are you?
He is a really good disguise. I love how they're including this, you know, Sherlock Holmes master of disguise and everything.
She lives quietly.
I like to see him coming out of disguise. I don't know, it's again sort of like a nice domestic little detail. Oh my god, an adaptation where we actually get to hear Irene sing.
She is a lovely woman, Watson. With a face that a man might die for.
I like it that they do acknowledge that Holmes looks at her and genuinely thinks she's beautiful.
I will accept this.
I like this.
I don't need no tip.
I really like this little interaction between them.
You don't mind breaking the law?
Not in the least.
Not really the
Yes,
chance of
Watson.
arrest.
Oh, Holmes plays it masterfully. He knows how to act.
Can't breathe.
Oh, she's gone. She saw it. She knows what's going on.
I cannot imagine such feelings.
I'm sure you cannot, madam.
Oh, I'm loving the little realization here because
Nothing like success for curing insomnia.
Good night, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
yes, Irene.
Charing Cross for the continent.
Yes, yes.
Never to return.
You bet she has, Holmes. You bet she has, because she's played your.
From what I have seen of the lady, yes, indeed, she is on a very different level to your majesty.
Yes, yes, she is.
In my
He
committee.
only looks on women.
He's so good. He looks so
As the
good
source
with
of
the
motives,
violin.
clues.
Again, instantly recognizable. You just know who this is supposed to
Keeps
be.
their photo-
I like that he looks a bit melancholic at the end here. Like he's contemplating and thinking. It's good. Oh, and we got some original illustrations here from the story. Good. And we're back. This was certainly very entertaining. I mean, Jeremy Brett, of course. He's a natural. He just slides into the role and you immediately recognize him as Holmes. You know who this guy is supposed to be. It feels very natural. I can definitely see why so many people see him as like the definitive version of Sherlock Holmes. Because you can just tell he feels very comfortable in the role. He knows what he's doing. It's really like sort of crafted this character suddenly like around the physicality. Like I also said during the commentary, like there's some stuff in there with like the physicality and the gestures and everything that other Sherlock Holmes actors, also like Benedict Cumberbatch, for example, have taken from this version of Holmes. They are like the hand gestures and everything. There's just something that's sort of bleeding into like the mainstream understanding of who Sherlock Holmes is, and it's all coming from Jeremy Brett's portrayal of the character. You can definitely see that. I like him a lot. He is definitely like very canon accurate. I like that he doesn't play him like too coldly. Like you can tell that there is sort of like there is like a cold removed side to his character, but I like that he sort of plays him also like a bit odd, like snidely, weirdly. Like, for example, in the way like he laughs at times, where you're like, okay, feels kind of hilarious and weird, but I know it kind of goes with the character. Or like, you know, ignoring, for example, the King of Bohemia when he like wants to shake hands or something, or just turning around and stopping the conversation all of a sudden. But he never feels too rude. He never feels like too cold, because you can see this very well in the interactions he has with Watson throughout the episode, that he's open about what he's doing. He is willing to acknowledge, you know, if Watson's doing something right. He is willing to like maybe crack even like a bit of a joke where he's a bit like judgy or sassy even at times. It's a good mix between like this cold, calculating side and the more, warm-hearted, emotional side of Holmes, which is also where the Scandal in Bohemia, just as a story, works really well, because Holmes isn't necessarily the good guy in the story. Like, and you see this realization in this episode. He sort of starts out as, this is just like a regular case. He starts working on it, but then he realizes, oh, there's actually more to Irene. Adler meets the eye. And I like that in like those one or two interactions he has, like very personally with Irene, and you can tell that his perception of her changes throughout the episode. So that by the end of it, you can definitely understand why he is so impressed by her. And I like that you can sort of see the little changes there. But overall, yes, definitely a fantastic portrayal by Jeremy Brett. I feel like I really need to watch like a couple of more episodes to like really get into the portrayal and just like the whole vibe of the show. But just like going by this, especially since this is the very first episode, you immediately get what this is supposed to be about. This is just like, the show doesn't try to do anything fancy. It's not trying to be like super special and unique. It just does what it's supposed to do. It goes with the original canon stories and takes all the plot beats from the story, takes direct lines from the story, takes direct dialogue from the story, and just runs with it. And this is basically what you want from a Sherlock Holmes adaptation, isn't it? Because there's nothing like too fancy in here. There's nothing that like sort of goes completely against what's in the canon. It sticks very, very close to the original story in like plot beats and in characterizations. And I mean, that's exactly what you want. And I like it. The whole vibe is brilliant. Like the set design, it feels accurately, wonderfully Victorian. I love the Baker Street set. I like that it feels very homely and domestic, but it's also sort of messy. You just feel like you know that this is Sherlock Holmes' place where he lives. I like that. I'm liking the chemistry between Sherlock and Watson as well. With this Watson actor, it feels very natural, especially like in the scene where Watson is sort of allowed to like deduce something about the paper, and Sherlock is actually kind of impressed by him and gives some compliment. I like that. It feels again very homely, and you can tell that these two have been living together for a while, and that they do share a deep friendship. Again, this is something you would probably see more of as the show goes on, so you would be able to judge that a little bit more accurately. But the chemistry works really well between the two actors, I think. And I know Watson doesn't have a whole lot to do in the Scandal of Bohemia storyline, but what you see from him, I think, works really well. I like that he's not a bumbling fool. He gets to shine. He has his moment. He is Holmes' sidekick, which is what he's supposed to be. He's roped into Holmes' plans. He does as he's told. He's loyal to a default. He trusts Holmes. He's willing to break the law if he thinks it's the right thing to do. And this is exactly what Watson is. This is what he's supposed to do. And I occasionally like the little reactions we get from him. He's kind of amazed by everything with the king, whereas Holmes is just like, it's just another guy, whereas Watson is like, oh, it's the king. And I like that you can see the contrast here between Holmes, who's just like very calm and collected all the time, and Watson is a bit more willing to like show that he's thrilled and excited or amazed by something. Why, like I said, you can see the contrast here between the more quote-unquote human side that Watson is often meant to like represent here. And I like him. Again, it's not like the best story to showcase Watson as a character, but what you see from him, I think works really well. It gives you a good impression of who this is supposed to be. He's kind of like an outsider's view, that he sort of gives you like the regular mainstream reaction to everything compared to how Holmes reacts to things. He's there to help Holmes out. He's there to sort of bounce ideas off with Holmes, and is at the end of the day, he's there to support him at all times because he trusts him. And I think you get that general idea from this episode. And I mean, you can't really say too much about the story because it's basically exactly the short story as you know it from the books, which I feel like is something we get so rarely. I mean, this is like one special thing about this television series, that it sticks so close to the original narratives, like to a default, where you can tell that they're taking lines from the original stories without altering them, without changing them. They're trying to be as close to the narrative as possible, while maybe occasionally trying to sneak in like outside perspectives that Watson wouldn't know about, but without making it too big of a thing where you can say, okay, no, this would probably still very much happen. It's fantastic. You just feel like you're diving into one of the original stories and you're just watching the visualization of it. Especially considering that the character of Irene Adler has been adapted so many times and in so many different and also bad ways. It's so wonderful to see an adaptation of this particular story in which Irene is exactly who she is supposed to be. That she is a beautiful and smart American opera singer and adventuress who is not the villain of the story. She's been wronged by the King of Bohemia. She's even wronged by Holmes, you could argue, in this story. She's just there doing a thing. She's an independent, strong woman who, in the 19th century, gives up her relationship with the king to get married for love. She gets married for love to another man and just wants to be left alone and live in peace. And we get all of that in this episode. It's wonderful. We get to see and hear her be an actual opera singer. Like, so many adaptations completely ignore that she's an opera singer. Even though I think that is something you could do at all times, even if it's like a modern day adaptation, Irene can still be an opera singer, an adventuress. It's like it's like the thing she does. And so many adaptations always ignore that. And this show just takes it and runs with it, and you get why she's left an impression on Holmes. You understand why, because she is, in a way, a formidable opponent, and she's just a very impressive woman to go up against. Which brings me to the one thing, which is like the one major criticism I have, which is maybe also due to the fact that they chose this to be the first episode of their series. Because one of the major points of the story, The Scandal in Bohemia, and the point of Irene as a character, is that Holmes, up until this point in the original stories, has on several occasions expressed very sexist and even misogynistic opinions about towards women, where he's like, the women are the inferior sex, they're very secretive, that he doesn't trust them, and that's the one thing that's missing from this story, because it is the very first story of the series, so we don't have the preceding stories like the Sign of Four and why can't I remember what it's called right now? You know what I mean. The very first story that I can't remember right now. This is the name. I will come back to that. But you know, and in those stories we get instances of Holmes expressing his opinion towards women, that he doesn't really like them all too much. That, you know, they're okay, but they're also weird because women. But in this episode, it's missing. And even in this original story, I think in The Scandal in Bohemia, at the very beginning, Holmes sort of mentioned some of his more like sexist leanings he has, which is absent from this. Which is why I think that at the very end, when he asks to keep a photograph and we hear Watson's narration that is all about, you know, that he's never made he's never talked ill of women again after meeting Irene Adler, and she's left quite the impression on him. It doesn't really work as intended in this version because it's the very first story of the series, so we didn't have time to explore Holmes's misogyny, and two, within the episode itself, we do not get an expression of Holmes's misogyny. We never get the feeling that he thinks women are inferior. We don't really get the impression that he thinks Irene is less of an opponent because she's a woman, that he thinks less of her. We don't really get that impression at all. And I think this is a common thing many Sherlock Holmes adaptations do. Maybe because they're scared of showing that Holmes isn't perfect. Many adaptations tend to ignore that Holmes expresses sexist opinions towards women. And maybe because they're scared to give him a flaw, maybe because they're scared that Holmes seems too unappealing as a character if they let him be openly sexist. Which I can kind of understand, but I would also love to have an adaptation where they lean into that, where it is expressed that Holmes has these opinions towards women, and then you give him character development, with Irene at the very end being the one who shows him, no, women are equal to men and can even outsmart Holmes if it comes down to it. That's the one thing I think that's missing in this episode, because you don't have that pre-development with Holmes' sexism. It doesn't really shine through in the episode. So I think the emotional impact of Irene, like the original point of her character, is a bit lost, I would argue, in this episode. Especially if you're not really familiar with the canon yourself. Because if you're familiar with the canon, you know what this is about. But if you watch this not having really read any of the stories, or only some of them, you wouldn't really feel like this has the same impact. You wouldn't really feel like, oh, okay, this has changed something in Holmes. You would get the impression that, yes, Irene has left an impact on him. Maybe you would even get a bit of a feeling like, did he like her? Maybe. But I don't think you would get this point about Holmes' opinion on women being changed through Irene. I don't really think you get that in this episode. So that would be like my one. That's the one major flaw that I find with this episode, which is mostly, like I said, due to the fact that it is the very first episode of the series. Maybe they should have. I get that this is the first episode or the first story of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes of the book, which is probably why they've chosen it. But maybe they should have started somewhere else. Maybe just so you could sort of build up Holmes' sexism, then have him meet Irene. But I mean, it's not like it's something that you're missing if you're familiar with the canon. It's something you're missing if you know what kind of development Sherlock usually goes through in the original stories, but it's not something you're missing if you haven't read the stories. If you haven't read the stories, you wouldn't really miss this. It's still a great adventure. You still get the impression that Irene is a special person to Holmes at the end of the story, that she's left quite the impression on him. You still get that same sentiment, but are maybe missing sort of like the deeper details about it, why she has left such an impression on him. But overall, I think this is a great first impression of the Granada television series. I definitely want to come back to it at some point. We're probably gonna do another Baker Street review down the line of like a later episode, maybe with like the other Watson actor. So when it comes down to it, you get to decide again which adventure we're going to watch. You could also tell me down in the comments below what some of your favorite episodes of the series are, and then maybe I'll go and watch those for a future Baker Street review. But as it stands now, I had a lot of fun with this episode. Jeremy Brett, definitely a fantastic Sherlock Holmes. He's definitely up there easily with the favorites. And like I said, I think I just need to watch more episodes to like fully get into it. But I think this is a very strong start. Finally it's a proper adaptation of A Scandal in Bohemia. It's a fantastic adaptation of the Irene Adler character. They nail it. They nail her personality. They nail her relationship with Sherlock. I think you get all the right impressions of the characters of the story. And I think if you watch this without really having read the stories, I think we would still have a lot of fun with it and get all of the major general and important impressions of the Sherlock Holmes world and of the Sherlock Holmes characters. So this is a very wonderful, very accurate, very satisfying adaptation to watch, and I'm definitely looking forward to like come back to it at some point. Okay, that's it for this Baker Street review. Do tell me down in the comments below what your opinions are on this particular episode or on the Granada series as a whole. Like I said, tell me about your favorite episodes down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done it already, and I'll see all of you very soon. Goodbye.